We've got the picture house on the left hand side here that was opened as a community buyout, all refurbished. It closed about 3 years ago and it was opened up again after a body of people got together and got the finances for it, and it was opened up, and I believe it's running very successfully. The red sandstone building on our right, it's the Scottish Episcopal Cathedral. And down the street by another 200 yards on our left hand side is a white shop that's just opened up again after being closed for over a year, and that was the shop that Diana's mother, Frances Shan Kidd, the late Frances Shan Kidd, she ran the shop down here, I'll point out to you, selling newspapers and toys in the early 70s. She sold the shop after a few years and bought the shop that's yellow in colour that I pointed out to you. Down where the lorry is on the right hand side, just to the right of just to the left of that lorry is the white shop that someone's just come out with a blue jacket there. That's the shop that was Diana's mum ran in the early 70s. And just to the left of the traffic lights is Oban Distillery. 1794 it started. The town was built round it, and it's one of the oldest and one of the smallest distilleries in Scotland. It produces a whisky called Oban malt whisky. Some of it Oban malt whisky, that's it there on our left hand side. The Clansman's the ferry that's just come in there, and the lifeboat at the far side of the bay is the Mora Edith MacDonald, one of the busiest lifeboat stations in Scotland. There's been 2 babies born on Oban lifeboat, the reason being that the lifeboat was over to take sick people or pregnant mums over to the hospital out with ferry hours. And one of the reasons for that hold up there coming down the street is because of the traffic coming off the ferry there. The redundant Church of Scotland in front of us, and the monument is in the middle of the roundabout is for Dr. McKelvey, who was a doctor for over 40 years and was instrumental in building the Fever Hospital, which was known as the McKelvey Hospital. Church in front of us, built in the start of the 1900s, replacing the church that was previously there before it, and that's the original burial ground for Oban to the rear of the church. The supermarkets lie to our right, the medical centre is on our left, and just up to the left of the traffic light here is Oban High School, where 1,200 pupils attend, travelling from as far afield as the island of Iona. Children come from far afield as far afield as the island of Iona. They leave home at 5 o'clock on a Monday morning, travel on 2 ferries, a 40-mile journey by bus, and arrive here for their secondary education at 9:15. Stay in a school hostel during the week and travel home again on a Friday evening. The large building just past the filling station here used to be the woolen mill, where they took the wool from the sheep, went through the process inside the factory there, and was turned out as tartan and tweeds at the other end of the factory. But I'm afraid it had to close, and it closed with a loss of a lot of jobs because it couldn't compete with man-made fibre. Hotel is just coming up on the right hand side. That was originally built by the McCaig family, the man that was responsible for building McCaig's Tower. That was their dwelling house. The House Hotel was originally built as the McCaig dwelling house, the man that was responsible for building McCaig's Tower, which dominates Oban's skyline with 44 arches in the lower circle and 50 in the upper circle. That's the auction mart there on our left hand side, where they sell the cattle and sheep. this starts dropping down now into the small village of Kilmore, which lies at the head of Loch Fiagan. I see Loch that will come up on the right hand side just in a few minutes. The old school and schoolhouse on our right hand side. Hasn't been a school here since the mid-60s. And on our left hand side is the Church of Scotland that only has a service once every 4th Sunday. That's Loch Fiagan on our right hand side, and looking across the water from us there's a large house in amongst the trees. It's known as Danach House. That was the home of Hugh McCorkindale. Hugh McCorkindale was married to Barbara Catlin, the writer. Diana Spencer's mother and father's marriage broke up in the late 60s. Her mother remarried a man called Peter Shan Kidd, who came from the wealthy Wallpaper family. They purchased a farm on the island of Seal, where we're heading this afternoon. They purchased the farm there, and he managed the farm and she ran the shop in Oban. I pointed out to you. Diana's father eventually remarried a woman called Renee, who was a daughter of Barbara Catlin. His mother ran the shop in Oban, selling newspapers and toy in the first shop, and sold it and bought the yellow shop selling greetings cards. But by this time Diana was associated with Prince Charles and eventually marrying Prince Charles, and it was a well-known fact and well publicised that her mother had a shop in Oban. And of course all the ladies wanted to get a glimpse of her that came to Oban on holiday, so they would go and meet her into the shop. They were more interested in what she was wearing rather than what she was selling, so she gave up the shop and spent more time helping the different charities raise money. There are 48 Scottish kings buried in the island of Iona. 48. When a king's remains were to be buried there at Iona, they brought the remains overland, transferred them onto what was known as the burial barge just along the road here, down on the foreshore, an area known as the Rock of the Dead, and that's where these kings used to get transferred onto the burial barge. Then the barge was secured and towed out the loch over to Loch Spelvey on Mull, and again it was transferred and taken. It was transferred and it was the remains were taken down through Glenmore down to Finnefort and across the short stretch of water to Iona. There they were placed in the sacred burial ground at Iona Abbey. 48 Scottish kings, other nationalities as well. There are 48 Scottish kings. This used to take place just down below us here on the right hand side. This is turning onto single track road here now. The next village we come to is Kilninver. Some of it lies on this road and some of it lies on the road we've just come off. Kilninver Cemetery is just round the corner here. Big high wall round it there, just in case anybody does a runner. Looking out the entrance to the loch there, you're looking over to the area, roughly Loch Spelvey area on Mull. And if you keep looking in that direction, you'll see the southern end of the island of Kerrera. Southern end of the island that gives Oban its natural harbour, Kerrera. We're going to go over a narrow bridge that will take us across the river Euchre. It flows down from Loch Scamadale. A nice scenic loch that lies about 3 miles away from here to the left as we turn to our right. you look across the opposite headland from us, you'll see a small house sitting on its own. It's called Tyebake. It's a Gaelic name and it means the wee house. And that's the house that was used in making the film The Ring of Bright Water, Gavin Maxwell's story about the otter. Bill Travers and Virginia McKenna were the main actors in the film, and it was filmed in 1967. At Oban, over at the wee house, and down at Easdale where we're heading, finished off from the Pinewood Studios down in London. This is quite a steep hill here, and I've got a good load on the busy day. I've got to ask some of the folk to go off and help me push the bus up the hill. We never ask anybody over the age of 80, especially if their mother's sitting beside them. That's Loch Seal on the left hand side, S-E-I-L. Nothing to do with flippers. The island that we're heading for, the island of Seal, quarried slate for well over 250 years. They quarried the slate at Balvicar Easdale, our destination, and 3 islands that lie immediately off the south end of the island of Seal. The island of Easdale Island had 5 quarries. The island of Belnahua had 1 large quarry, and the island of Lynn had quarries at Toberoniki and Killapo. The slate industry started going into decline before the First World War. Made a revival again in this area after the First World War, but it was never as it was prior to the 1900s. Other quarries had opened up close by a railway line. Welsh quarries were in competition against them, and I'm afraid because this quarry was so far away off the beaten track, it always going to be a problem getting its product away to its buyer. They used to ship the slate out by boat here. It was taken to all parts of Britain by ships and taken across to Ireland. And it was also taken down to the Lights River, Clyde and Glasgow, where it was put onto larger ships and taken across the Atlantic. I'm afraid one of the final nail in the coffin to the slate industry was the man-made roof tile. I'm afraid that was more or less it finished then. That's the island of Seal right across the water from us. It's encircled in water known as the Atlantic Ocean. And that's why the bridge is sometimes addressed as the bridge that crosses the Atlantic. The proper name of this bridge that will go across is called the Clachan Bridge, built in 1792 at a cost of £470. It's sometimes addressed as the bridge that crosses the Atlantic. Now, out at Cornwall, I told you there was a rise and fall of 14 feet during spring tides. So if you think there's no water under the bridge here, just remember that we're at low water as we're passing just now or thereabouts. Bridge built in 1792, high arching it so that the sailing boats could get underneath it. Here's someone scrambling for their camera here. So looking to the left you've got Balvicar and Ling, and up to the right you've got the high hills of Morven and the island of Kerala. 1792 is a long time ago, so we'll not sit there too long. the Tyne Truish Inn on our right hand side. The Tyne Truish. The House of Trousers. 1745, during the Jacobite Rebellion, the kilt was banned on mainland Scotland. They continued to wear the kilt on the island of Seal, where we are now. And when they would go on business to the mainland, they had to change from the kilt into trousers. And they used the inn as the cloakroom for the island, and that's how it got its name, the Tyne Truish, the House of Trousers. Diana Spencer was a frequent visitor here as a young girl before she was famous and also after she was famous. She used to come here with her brother and sisters to her mother's farm. Her mother didn't have custody of her children from her first marriage. She only had access to them. She only had access to them. And once Diana married Prince Charles and had her own 2 children, William and Harry, she used to bring them to see their grandmother. But as regards royal children, they'd nearly always been and gone by the time that most folk knew they'd been at all, just because of who they were. Shankit's farm lay 3/4 of a mile up to the right of the trees in front of us at a place called Oban. They stayed there until the breakup of that marriage. After the breakup of that marriage, he moved away to New Zealand. She bought a house further along the road here, and the farm was sold. That's the road up to Oban there. Well, Vicar Bay in front of us to the left, and the high hill of Scarborough to the rear of it, the island of Scarborough. The house that's coming up on my right hand side was the house that Frances Shankit bought from Kenneth McKellar, the Scottish singer, and that's the house she lived in until she passed on. That's it there on her right. The house name was called Cavendish, called after where the standing stones are on the island of Lewis. Vicar Bay there, there's a small fishing fleet here of about 8 boats, and they mainly fish for lobsters, prawns and scallops. The 2 quarries have been utilised today as boat repair yards and for the winter pleasure craft. Once we clear the trees here on our left, you'll see the Isle of Seal 9-hole golf course. To the left of the golf course you'll see the houses that the quarry workers used to live in. The road ahead of us continues for 2 miles down to North Coen. We're going to go up over the hill here and down the other side. We'll be at our destination by about 10 past. We'll be stopping there until 10 minutes to. We'll leave again at 10 minutes to for our return journey back to Oban. Top of the next hill lies a building that was brought over as a redundant church 10 years ago. It had lay empty for some time. Lay empty, bought over about 10 years ago. It was totally reclad in modern corrugated iron. Never altered the external design of the building. Turned it into a story-and-a-half dwelling house, and that's it up ahead of us. It's called the Tin Church nowadays. It was featured in the Grand Design programme and television. About 9 years ago. There's a nice view here, looking over Easdale Island. The coastline of Mull stretching away down behind it. That's the coastline of Mull stretching away down behind there. As far as you can see to the left, just round the corner from that lies the island of Iona. That's Easdale Island, which had 5 quarries at one time, and they all went down the way, and that's where they're going to hold the World Skimming Championships this weekend, going to be held on the island there in one of the disused quarries. And looking out to our left, if you crank your neck, you'll see an island that's shaped like a whale's head. You'll see it become more apparent once we go around the next corner. To the left of it, I beg your pardon, to the right of it is the island of Collinsay in the distance. The island that I'm talking about, shaped at Whale's Head, is an important ecclesiastical site in Great Britain because St Columba came from Iona. They brought the monks. He brought the monks with him, and they used to use this island as a retreat. to recharge his batteries, so to speak. That's the Gadlogs right in front of us there just now. Colonsay away to the right of it in the distance. The islands that are now in front of us is the island of Belnahua, the island of Orsi, and the island of Islay. You just faintly see the island of Islay this afternoon. You could see it more clearer. You could see it more clearer this morning. The lighthouse is Flada Lighthouse. Behind the lighthouse, Flada Lighthouse, is the island of Jura. To the left of the lighthouse is Lunga, and left of that again is the high one, is Scarba. Islay, of course, lies north of Northern Ireland, and it's where some of the best single malt whiskies are produced. Lagavulin, Bunnahabhain, Ardbeg, Bowmore, to name a few of them. That's one of 3 flooded quarries at Easdale, this one here. Primary school for Easdale Island and the island of Seal. This house in front of us used to be the quarrymaster's house. It was the hotel for a long number of years. It's now turned back into a dwelling house. After, in the last 8 years, it's owned by a lady called Fiona Campbell Walters, who used to be a model years ago. The water butts outside would have caught the domestic water for the domestic supply years gone by. There's a crane at the end of the building on the left. They used to load, it came from the end of the pier that they used to load the boats with years gone by. And there's the coastline of Mull. Coastline of Mull, right across the water from us. And that's where the ferry comes in down the left there, where the ferry comes in to take you over to Easdale Island. Yeah, folks, I'm just going to let you off there. There's toilet facilities inside that building that I'm stopping at, the Highland Arts. Toilet facilities there.